Steam is not the only path for indie game devs. Let's see what else is out there, and one of these might be a better option for you. So there's all kinds of indie development paths. It's just not talked about. There's countless dozens, if not more, paths available for indie devs, but it's not as click-worthy for others to talk about as a Steam game or a Steam title would be. The first one we should talk about is the one you've heard about over and over, and that is releasing a major Steam game. Something that's along the lines of like 1 to 3 years, maybe more, but usually between 1 to 3 years. Now this is one where we hope to get big, go viral, make $1 million. It's the one with the biggest reward, but it also has the biggest risk. Now, I want to put this out there, there's just nothing wrong with any of these that I'm going to talk about. They're all different from each other. They all have benefits, they all have cons. And this is just to determine what's the best path for you. Some of your paths might change as you go through your journey, and you might decide one way is better than the other, but it's good to know what is out there, what's available for indie developers, and what path you can take. So that's your first one, a major Steam release. Your next viable option are smaller Steam releases, maybe something between 2 to 4 releases in a year. The games would probably consist of something along the lines of singular action, like placing something on the ground, or doing a simple shooting mechanic, or a simple attack mechanic, or a simple puzzle game. These are very viable options. Think about all these small mobile games you've played, or these small puzzle games you've played on Steam, or on handhelds, or on your Switch or something. Most of them have singular actions, or maybe 2, but usually very small. They're not super complex in scope, usually polished pretty well, but overall the game is a smaller game because of the simplicity. Now these usually are not big blockbuster games. Once in a while they will become big blockbuster games, but in all the game is still a smaller game, smaller by scope, by time of development. I'm not ranking these by how much they can make. I'm ranking these by how difficult they are or how much time it takes to make for some of these variations in Steam titles. So like I said, the second option is small Steam games. Something that doesn't have very long dev cycle, something you can learn quickly. If it does flop, you can get back on the horse, you can get right back at it and continue on your next game. That might only take another 3 months, and maybe you'll learn from the first one and build off of it and make a better, more successful game your second time around. The idea behind these small Steam games instead of one large game that takes 1 to 3 years is to have your hands in multiple money pots, multiple ways, revenue streams coming in. It's where if you do fail on 1 or 2, maybe your third one will pick up. Maybe every other one is better than the ones before that. It's a way to, if you do fail, you can bounce back quicker. These are viable options. You can build small studios of it. You can do it on your own. It's just another option out there is to do smaller Steam games and try to learn and keep the development quick, the development cycle quick. So your third path is to join a small or medium-sized studio. When I say small, I mean something that is established already out there, not starting out your own, something that's established that maybe a handful of developers already exist in it, maybe a dozen or a few dozen. Nothing too large, probably in the indie sphere still. There's a lot of indie studios out there that are decently made, well run, bring in a lot of money, make a lot of good games that do hire people. You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to build everything out your own. You don't have to be your own boss, your own CEO, your own founder. You can go and join other teams and build off with them. Along your journey, you might decide that you don't want to be the leader of your group. You don't want to make the executive decisions, and you'd rather just develop games, that you'd rather just use your skills or build out your skills and help out a team and be part of a project. Maybe you don't want to be the one making all the decisions, all the design decisions. Joining or getting hired on, I should say, in a small studio is a viable option. So the fourth one we're going to talk about is one that's kind of frowned upon, looked down on. It's joining a AAA studio or getting hired on to a AAA studio. And the biggest turmoil, the biggest conflict between this or amongst this or for this is the treatment that is said to be the treatment of the employees, right? We've heard the stories, the horror stories of how AAA studios treat their employees poorly, right? And this is usually, I'm not condoning this, but this is pretty typical of a lot of big companies, even outside of the game dev industry, right? I'm in software, I'm a software engineer, and I've seen firsthand at different companies how certain companies treat their employees versus others. It's a common thing. It's not a good thing, nothing to make an excuse about, but it is a real thing, and it is a consideration you should take when thinking about doing a AAA studio or joining one or getting hired on as at one. But it is a viable option. You might not want to work in small studios and work on small games. You might not want to build out your own projects. You might want to work on the next Halo or the next Call of Duty or the next Assassin's Creed or the next big blockbuster IP. You might want to work for that. You might want to work for Nintendo or Sony or Bethesda or Blizzard or whatever company out there. That might be your dream, and you might be perfectly fine doing that. A lot of people are. Think about all the employees, all the developers, all the artists, all the game designers, all the directors that are in these studios. There are thousands of employees in these studios. And these studios stay alive because of the amount of employees that they have, because of the large projects. Now, you might not like AAA games, and that's up to you. This is why it's an option, it's a path, it's not something you have to take. But you can work towards a AAA studio career. You can be perfectly happy in it. If that's what you want to do, work a typical job, a normal job, but developing games, then that's fine. Work a 9-to-5 job developing games for a big studio, then do that. That's a viable option. You don't always have to stick as an indie dev. You don't have to stay that route just because you started that route. Okay, so the fifth option is a little bit different from the first four, and that is building out tools and assets. You can go full time, you can do a full career just building out tools for other people to use, just building out art for other people to use, just building out plugins for other people to use. And I'm not talking about freelance here. I'm talking about maybe uploading things to Unity Store or the Epic Store or some other platform that hosts plugins, tools, or assets. You can build out major systems, complex systems that people use that you charge tens, if not hundreds of dollars for, and you can have a full career doing this. It's a viable option. You might discover along your journey, along your path, that you don't like building out full games, that you'd much rather build out tools and systems that others can reuse over and over. That's a perfectly viable option. There's a lot of good systems out there, a lot of good tools, a lot of good developers that do create these that dozens of people use all the time. These systems are made to speed up production, to speed up development. So it's a perfectly viable option for you to become a developer that just focuses on tools and assets for others to use. So the sixth path is similar to the last one, but this is freelance or contract work. This is something where you can jump in and out of projects or take on projects fully if someone hires you to do that, but it's something where someone pays you to do a certain amount of work, to do certain tasks, and you get that done in a certain amount of time, right? So like I said, that can consist of jumping on teams, being part of a team for a certain amount of time to work on specific things. If maybe they need extra help, maybe it's crunch time, maybe you're efficient at a certain system, specific tools, specific systems that they want to utilize. Maybe they need an artist freelance to do that. Maybe they need someone really good at shaders. You can do that. Maybe they need someone who's really good at level design. You can get hired to do that. It's a little bit different from building out tools. It's similar because you're kind of doing gig work, but this one is for specific tasks, for specific teams typically. Not someone just buys something from you and they use it. You will be developing alongside other developers or other teams or something similar to that. But this is a perfectly viable option. Now, some of these options are going to entail more risk than others. That's dependent on your skill level. That's dependent on how well known you become. That's dependent on how you market yourself. I can't say one way or the other that one is a better option than the other. It's some people are successful doing freelance work and other people are not. Some people are successful creating tools and other people are not. It's really dependent on your skill level, how well you market yourself, and how well you develop the tools or your professionalism as you present yourself or deal with other teams. So the seventh option can go along with a lot of these other ones, but I'm going to put it as itself, and that is building out your own studio. Why I can go along with other options is because you can do this with a multiple of the other tasks. You can do this with the large Steam game, you can do this with the small Steam games, you can do it with tools, you can do it with freelance gig work, you can have a small team that does it. But I kept it separate because you might stay solo, or you might build out a team. So doing this is doing it as a team, developing a team, building out a team, starting a studio where maybe you do some development work, maybe you're the artist, maybe you don't want to do any of that, you want to be the director or the game designer, or just run it as like the CEO or something. You can build out your own studio. I would recommend at some point, if you are a solo developer, you try building out a team. It's good for distribution of labor, distribution of work. It's good to speed up development time or fine-tune your development or fine-tune your game. Building out a small team doesn't have to be large. It could be 2 people, you and someone else. It can be 3 people. It can be half a dozen. It's up to you. Too large would be a different category, I think, but a small team would be a great place to start or a viable option. It doesn't require any extra finance, it doesn't require any capital. You can do it on revenue share. You can do it as, okay, we agree to everyone has a X amount of share in the company, in the studio based on your role, and hopefully the game is successful that you're creating, and then as that happens, you get funds, you get more revenue, now you have capital, and you can continue growing your studio. So these are just a few of the options out there. There's a dozen more. Like say if you're going into the game studio one, that can be broken down, like the AAA studio, that can be broken down into multiple different pathways, right? Depending on if you want to be a 3D modeler or an artist or a developer or whatever it is, you can have specific roles that you can go down those paths. But this is just a general overview of the ones that I thought were the most relevant or the most common. So let's talk about how you actually get into these paths. What's the best option for you? Well, I think from my own personal experience, teaching myself software engineering and teaching myself game dev and still on my game dev journey, I think they all have the same starting path. You all have to learn, you still have to learn the basics, the foundation of game dev. You still have to learn the code, you have to learn some art, you have to learn how to do the full game dev process, how to create a project, fill it with content, polish it, and publish it. You still have to learn these basics before you can go down any of these paths. The foundation, the fundamental, the starting point is all the same for all of these paths. And then once you get some experience in it, when you start developing your own games, finishing games after a few projects, I wouldn't do this too early, but after a few projects, you'll start to realize what you want to do. Do you want to focus on larger Steam games? Do you want to focus on smaller Steam games? Are you saying, I don't really want to focus on Steam at all, and I'd rather go work for someone else? These are options. Maybe I just want to build tools out, but you still need to build out the foundation. It's very important to build out your foundation, but it's also just as important to identify at some point early on what path you're aiming for. But then as you go on, as you progress, your path can change. After you develop a few games, you might realize that, well, I originally wanted to do a large Steam game, but then I realized that wasn't what I really wanted to do. Maybe I want to do smaller Steam games because I just don't like tackling that big of a project. Maybe I don't want to make a Steam game at all. So I need to switch my path, switch my version, switch my direction to maybe a studio path, right? So we can talk a little bit about certain paths and how you might get into them. Just in general, nothing too specific because everyone's path is going to be slightly different. We all know the Steam path, right? We've heard it a dozen times. It varies a little bit. My path is a little bit different than some of the other developer paths out there, what I suggest at least. But I think you should build a foundation. You should get away from tutorials as quickly as possible, maybe using them as reference, but start building out small projects as quickly as possible. And I mean truly small projects, not just what the general public says of what a small project. I mean single action projects. Publishing them, not to something like Steam, because everyone says, well, those are just crap games, right? I'm not talking about Steam publishing. I'm talking about free website publishing like itch.io or something. And building out skill like that. Every project pushing yourself to the limit, to another limit, focusing on building out your skill and fine-tuning your skills and becoming a better developer overall. I think that's foundational, that's fundamental for any Steam type of game, and expanding on, then diverting to if you want to do smaller games or larger games and focusing on different skills. But now I think here's a difference, a big difference when it comes to if you want to do Steam games versus studio projects, right? If you want to join a studio or get hired on a studio, it's very important to build out a portfolio of projects, a portfolio of your skills. And I know this firsthand because this is exactly what I did to become a software developer. Before I became a software developer, I had zero programming skills. and I stumbled into web development. I wanted to get into programming. I wanted to get into software, but I didn't know how. I didn't have a good background in it. I took one C++ class in college, and that was it. It was very basic. And then I stumbled upon web development. I didn't want to build websites. I didn't have any interest in it, but I did like the fact that I could write some HTML, some CSS, some JavaScript, and I could see it come to life on my screen right there in front of me on my local. It was awesome. It really opened the doors for me, opened my eyes. So then I started, after learning a few months, about 3 to 4 months, I started building out projects. I started building out a portfolio of projects that I could show off, I could send to companies along with my resume. I could send to them and say, hey, this is my progression. This is my skills. These are what I completed. They were crap. They were garbage compared to what I can do now. But they showed that I could learn, I could teach myself, that I was self-driven, that I could take a project from nothing to completion, that I could focus on specific areas, specific skills, and build those skills out. And each project got better and better and better and more advanced. I introduced different frameworks, different tech stack, different languages, and I built on top of it. I didn't jump like from JavaScript to C++ to Python. I kept it all honed together. I built on top of it, right? I didn't just jump around randomly. There was a goal behind it. It was strictly web development. But that landed me a job in under a year, from going from no experience to becoming a software developer in under a year. It landed me a job. And now I'm a software engineer in embedded systems. I pivoted again from web to embedded. But that's just an example that you would do the exact same thing in game development. You would build out small projects. They don't have to be anything groundbreaking. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You build out small projects that just show the employer, the person hiring you or potentially hiring you, that you can take something and turn it into something, that you can build out some small project and show that you can bring it to completion, that you have a certain set of skills. Maybe some of the portfolio projects want to be specifically on a specific tool or some shaders or something, but it's important to show that you can bring things to completion, because that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for someone to join their team that has never completed a project and everything's in prototype stage. They want someone who can actually finish the work, because their goal is to finish projects, because the only way you make money as a studio is by selling games. You don't sell prototypes, you sell real games. You get someone out there to buy it. You need to get it to the player. That was just a long-winded explanation of how to get into studio work, and that is to build a portfolio of projects. It's the number one thing you could do, especially if you don't have a degree or anything like that, is build a portfolio of projects to show off your skill. Now, some of the other paths like gig work, like freelance or the tool making, those are a little bit different. The tools are one of the simplest things I think to actually get into. Is after you build out some skill, the same beginning path, build out your skill, then you decide, well, if that's what you want to do, well, what kind of tools would you like to use for yourself that would help you speed up production, help you speed up development? That's a great place to start, right? It might be an objective system or a UI system or a top-down system, right? Some sort of system that someone will be able to in the future download, plug into their system, plug into their Unity project or their Unreal project or their Godot project and use it. It could be, maybe you want to be a 3D modeler and just focus on 3D modeling. Sell those. Maybe you want to do music. Sell that. Maybe you want to do level design. Sell that. Build out projects. Get really good. I wouldn't diversify too much at first. I'd really hone in on like 1 or 2 major systems and show and really refine that. Because if it's a really refined system, it will pick up speed, it will pick up pace, it will pick up traction. The best systems out there on all the asset stores are the ones that are really refined, the ones where the studio or the developer is fine-tuning, constantly updating, constantly keeping up to date, constantly keeping it with the newest version of the systems, of the engines out there. It's really good to just stick with 1 or 2 and really refine those tools. Now, the gig work might be one of the hardest to actually get into. Not saying the hardest to be successful in, but to get into, because it is hard to market yourself. It is. It's hard to just reach out to people. Now you're not only doing game development, now you're having to market yourself. Now you're having to reach out get your work out there, because you have to have some work to show that you can do things for people to hire you, right? And it's going to start off slow, it's going to start off small, and you probably shouldn't ask for a lot. Now this can be an entirely new video or entirely separate video on how to do gig work, but it is a viable option. And I think the best way, probably if I were to do it myself, I would start building out small projects, maybe something similar to a portfolio for studios. This might be a similar path, because you need to show off your skill. You need to show, if you're reaching out to companies, to studios, to other developers, because you need to do a lot of reach out work. You can't expect everyone to come to you. You have to do reach out work. You need to show them that you can do things. It might even be as direct as building something out specifically for a specific studio or specific developer and saying, hey, I built this out for you to use. You can use it for free, but these are the skills I want to show you. And maybe in the future we can work together. Something like that. You have to put yourself out there when you do gig work and freelance work. It's not, you can't rely on people coming to you. You have to do the work. And that's going to be building out projects and then reaching out to people. And that's why I said it can be more complicated to get started, because you have to get out there, especially if you're an introverted person. It's kind of hard. It might be hard for you to start reaching out. So that might not be the best option also if you're an introvert, but it is a viable option. Pretty much talked about all the paths except for the studio path of how you would actually go along those or start that. And that's kind of like up to you. You can start it any way you want with as many developers as you want. I think important things to look at when you do, or if you do. Now, to backtrack just slightly, you do still need to build a foundation. It's really hard. It's going to be really hard to start a studio if everyone inside the studio is starting from the ground up, has zero skill, because we don't know how everyone's going to be motivated or how much the motivation is. We don't know if everyone's going to stick with it. We don't know everyone's work ethic or time schedule. So it's good to develop some skill, to build a foundation, understand where you are as a developer, where you want to go, and understand what you can do, and reach out to people that also have similar interest or similar skill set. Probably you can reach out to people who are better than you. Would be a very good option to bring in people who can teach you. You don't have to be the best person on your team, and I'd highly recommend not being the best person on your team and bring in people that you can learn from. The idea behind that is, if you're the best person on the team, why do you need these other people, right? If you can bring someone in that's a better programmer than you and can program faster than you, then let them do that, and you can work on other things. You can build out other skills. But the first thing to do, a good place to start, is to have skill and to reach out to people or form a studio with other people who actually have some skill also, not someone who's starting from the ground up. You should have a similar work ethic or similar goals in mind. Like, you should be able to put around the same time into development, because then that's when turmoil starts. That's when studios fall apart, is when some people hold grudges. There's conflict because they think someone's doing X amount of work and this other person's not doing enough work. They're not carrying their own weight. You should possibly pick people based on roles, distribution of labor, right? Maybe you don't need 10 developers and 0 artists. Maybe you need to bring in an artist and cut back on your developers, right? Because you might need that. If no one has art skills, you probably need to bring someone in who does have art skills, depending on what project you're working on. But balancing the roles, picking the right people, and it's typically not a good idea to pick people just based on friendship, right? Friends aren't always the best co-workers, the best partners in projects. Probably come across grand ideas talking to people all the time, or talking to your buddies all the time about these great game ideas, but then they don't actually ever learn anything, right? You're progressing in your game dev path and they're still haven't even touched the engine yet, and it's been 6 months. That's probably not the best person to start a studio with. If you started at the same time and they haven't progressed at all and you've been making progress day in and day out. So I guess the biggest takeaway is build your foundation and then look for people that have similar goals, can put similar time into it, and are similar or kind of like-minded in what you want to get done and what path you want to take the studio in. So, I separated these paths to explain them more, but you can also combine some of these paths. Like I said, the studio can also go along with Steam releases, large or small. It can go along with tools and gig work and everything. Now, there's not just one single right path. Whatever right is what's best for you, and that's only you can determine. I can sit here all day long and talk to you about different paths out there and recommend what I think would be best or have my own opinion on it, but in the end, it's up to you to decide what path is best for you based on what you like, based on your skill set, based on where you want to take your life, where you want to take your journey. That might pivot, you might need to pivot. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're going down a certain path and you realize this is not the way I want to go, then switch and try something different, because you won't know until you try it. So you need to pick a path to start with and then see if that's the right one for you. But like I said, there's no right path to do this. It's whatever's right for you, and you have to determine that. So if you would like some help determining that, or picking paths, or deciding, or getting help from other developers, I have a private game dev club where it's like-minded developers, where we're helping each other grow. It's not a competition. It's not who's best. It's not who has the best game. We're truly trying to help each other grow, become better developers, constantly helping, constantly seeking out. And it's not some crazy Reddit, subreddit, or anything like that where it's a bunch of trolls. These are true developers looking to really help each other. There's a link in the description. You should check it out. So thanks for coming. I really appreciate your time. I hope you success on your journey, and I'll see you next time.